All right, I will record this just in case, but I feel like I will be quite repetitive on this one if I post it on YouTube like today or something. This is the reality of jump points in Star Citizen from Avenger. Avenger was an EVE player. He definitely understands what can happen at places like these, at choke points and things like that. And yeah, he seems to share a lot of the same concerns that I do, would be my guess. But we'll have to see. I haven't seen this yet, so let us see what oh, I'm muted. Hold up. Boop. There we go.
Welcome back, everyone. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Star Citizen's upcoming jump point features and another perspective to look at when it comes to the reality of what you're probably going to encounter when these mechanics come in. So this will be the PvP lens of jump points.
Yeah, I think
currently how CIG has explained.
I think this is a really healthy view for people to see. And I think that this is a video that should be kind of shared around, is you can see the jump points from your own lens if you're an industry player, if you're a screenshotter or whatever. But I think people like Avenger have a certain lens on what will happen here, and I think it's going to be really healthy to hear their perspectives on things like this.
How the system is going to work is from Stanton to Pyro and Pyro to Stanton, you'll have a main jump point. This illustration shows both the planets and the thick red and blue lines symbolizing the main jump routes that are always there and permanent. If you don't want to use the main jump points and you want to go a little safer, you have to find, track, and scan down the other jump points that come up at different times in random locations, and they're not consistent. This is very...
The only thing is, have they communicated that this would be a thing that we would see in 4.0? I'm not sure. Yes, this also looks like sperm.
Similar to EVE Online's wormhole stuff, where there are certain ways in and out of systems, but you have to find them and search them out. This might be some pretty cool exploration gameplay, but they're not reliable, and they might not be able to take a large number of people, and it might take a lot longer to find them than you might realize. Using the main jump points is what most people will most likely be doing, and is where the most traffic will be. To a PvPer or somebody who's going to be engaging in piracy, they are going to look for the most active, most common routes that people will be taking, because the more people that are moving, the more chances they have to find someone who's got a lot of cargo that they can steal.
Or just in general, the content that they're looking for. So I think most people accept that piracy should exist in Star Citizen, whether it's NPCs or players or whatever, right? This is yeah, like Blues, who's a pirate in the game, says, what big news? Like, wow, like Avenger is saying things that are super obvious. Guys, unfortunately, this stuff isn't very obvious to the members of our community, okay? The members of maybe my community or Avengers community, yes. The PvP communities, these are obvious things. But players are going to think that they're just going to be able to jump through jump points and it's going to be just fine. Pyro is a lawless system. Coming from Pyro to Stanton will be difficult. Coming from Stanton to Pyro will be less difficult on the Stanton side, but it most likely will be pretty scary when you get across on the Pyro side, right? Guys, these things actually have to be said, right? So we'll see. And CIG did not say they were safe.
When players know what routes people will most likely be taking, the next step is finding what's called the choke point. Where is the highest concentration and where can it be choked off as quickly as possible?
Or as easily or whatever.
Will be the main jump routes. And even though CIG may be trying to find ways to stop people from camping the jump routes, the reality is it is going to happen at a staggeringly alarming rate. Especially when 4.0 comes out, I can't imagine.
Certainly on the initial launch, it's going to be pretty funny how silly people are going to find the line, find the boundaries, see how far they can go, right? I think that's pretty obvious.
Imagine the sheer number of people camping jump routes, looking for easy kills.
They said there will be a safe station at Pyro. Yes, there is a station there, but safe is very much in quotes, like you put it. And I would maybe have to go back to the video. I don't recall them saying that, to be honest. What I recall is while I was reacting to it, there were a few devs in the chat, and one of them confirmed that gate camping is possible, but they're doing things to try to make it more difficult. But it doesn't mean it's impossible.
Piracy opportunities,
Certainly
and
not
just
on the Pyro
plain PvP. Now, this doesn't mean it has to be a bad thing. Maybe having a little bit of a scuffle before you enter or exit Pyro might be quite entertaining and quite fun. Although I have a sneaky suspicion that most people will be unprepared for the realities of entering Pyro and then, worst of all, trying to exit.
Yeah, I think trying to exit Pyro will be the hardest thing. I agree with him on that. What I'm not necessarily, just like his wording here, is he thinks that it'll be fun to fight. I think a majority of the player base that is playing Star Citizen now will not find a little scuffle enjoyable whatsoever. At all.
As it stands right now, the anomaly that you're using to warp from system to system has what's known as an exclusion zone. The process is you fly up, request an opportunity to go through, you queue up into a group, that group then gets close to the anomaly, tunes their ship, and sends out a pulse to allow the wormhole to open. In this process, there are gate guns and stationary systems that are supposed to protect you from this process as you stand in space.
Literally standing still, by the way, right?
Aligning, tuning, and preparing to warp. This may be where you are the most vulnerable, because not only are you
with your
standing still,
yes,
specifically looking a certain way and waiting for the system to pick you up and get ready to warp you, you're also in quantum mode with your shields down, also vulnerable to attack. On top of that, if anything physically gets in the way between you and the warp point, your automatic calibration will fail and you'll have to wait until you can try again. This adds an incredibly vulnerable point for any players trying to enter one system, either going from Pyro to Stanton or Stanton to Pyro. The tactical situation, if I were to draw it out, looks a little bit like this. The Singularity's exclusion zone makes it so that any ships that get within a certain...
And let's be real, players will put themselves right there. They'll just block you. They'll find out the edge of the exclusion zone. They'll know the exact distance from the jump point, and they'll just sit there.
Certain distance of it will get physically pushed away. So there is a minimum distance that people are going to get pushed up on. Now, you could fly to the edge of this exclusion zone, but it still doesn't stop you from getting attacked by hostiles when you're at your most vulnerable. And because this is a choke point, everybody is going to have to get to this physical point in space before they can go into Pyro. Once they're actually through that...
Now, like most situations in Star Citizen, because we're dealing with 100-player servers, this theoretical example is not going to happen as often as Avenger is implying that it will. It's going to happen every time he plays. It's going to happen every time other PvPers play, because this is the choke point they're going to take advantage of or defend from, or so on and so forth. It's going to be the kind of content that they're looking for. What he is 100% right is on the launch, this is going to happen on probably every server. After launch, if the servers remain not MMO servers, this is going to be way less of an issue than it appears to be in this video. If the server caps goes up and we start to see more of an MMO, I don't think we're going to see an MMO level of players in a server anytime soon, but if we do, this is going to happen all of the time, especially if there are only 2 choke points coming in from Pyro and going out to Pyro.
Zone, and they enter into Pyro, the chance of you catching them on the other side is significantly lower. because of so many different points that you pop out on, so many different locations.
Yeah, I mean, it'll essentially become an Arena Commander map for PvPers to just fight at constantly, and nobody will be able to move between systems if there's a lot of players. So they are going to have to come up with ideas to, make this a little bit more difficult. But I truly believe gate camping should and needs to be a thing. Like, the sandbox needs to exist, right? We need to have players creating problems, and we need to have players solving those problems with their guns and stuff, right? Like, we need
and even for certain people, they may actually want to exit the tunnel, I guess you could say, the quantum tunnel, before they get to their destination, to even have a more random location to pop up into. So naturally, if you're going to be attacked, it's going to be at the station in the system that you're in, heading to the next system. Now, we also have gate guns that are around, but if I've learned one thing from the gate guns in Star Citizen, is that they're simply ineffective at stopping any kind of hostile takeover of any kind of space.
Is how many people are against or for the guns just being like super hit scan, one-shotting, but maybe that there's a build-up that you need to get to. So I don't know if they should just be like one-shotting people, because then I think you get the one of the shittiest parts of EVE. I know we explained a lot of the good things about EVE. This is one of I think the most cringe, stupid things about EVE. In EVE, there's high sec, low sec, and null sec. In high sec, players have a sense of safety because like ships and stations will attack players if they, do criminal stuff. But I think it happens in like a short period of time they show up, but they will just destroy you, right? So the EVE people will help me here a little bit in chat. But what I understand about the way EVE works and how the brain of a ganker in EVE thinks is, I get this amount of ships, and these ships cost this much, so I can afford to lose them. And then they decide who they're going to gank based on the value of that ship and what they might get from it, right? And I think that that's like one of the weirder, like, you're sacrificing yourself. I don't think that'll work in this game with a permadeath mechanic. Like, players should not want to take that risk. Hopefully the permadeath mechanic is punishing enough to prevent things like that. But I think that's what you end up with if you end up with like insta hit scan guns or something like that. I think, a good reputation system, stuff like that, could help with this. Like, player choice needs to matter. If I'm camping the gate on the pyro side, pyro gang should be pissed at you. You would think, because you're screwing up their bottom line, right? Or a gang that doesn't own the jump gate, because hopefully, this is my copium of pyro, is you're hoping that there's always a power struggle between the gangs in pyro for power, and the ultimate power would be being in control of the jump gate, would be my guess. Also, one thing that they never explained, are we paying money to go through these gates? If we're calling ATC, stuff like that?
It may limit the size of ship that can reliably stay in the area, but any group of fighters will have absolutely no problem destroying or getting rid of the gate guns, or just simply avoiding them entirely while they attack their main target. Short of adding an armistice zone where no damage can be applied,
the rings could have had turrets. They can float turrets anywhere, man. Chill.
It still doesn't solve the problem of troll organizations going around and using expendable cheap ships to ram people as they're in this vulnerable position.
Yeah, and he's very much has EVE brain right now. There's no such thing as an expendable cheap ship in Star Citizen, except for the like claim timer maybe, but he's got EVE brain. But this is the right mentality to be bringing to the wider community and explaining what could and may happen in the later game, as well as in the short term if they do anything about losing your ships and stuff like that.
If CIG wants to create an experience where multiplayer gameplay is rewarded, encouraged, and exciting, they want to make sure that they reduce the amounts of opportunities players have to make the experience as miserable as possible. I think there's no problem with having natural choke points that players consolidate into.
Of course.
The kinds of dynamic events and player versus player organizational fights that will be happening add a very cool dynamic to Star Citizen that, quite honestly, is at the core of the experience for a lot of people like myself and I think many others.
And he's just speaking even from the PvP side of things. From a non-PvP perspective, it's super cool as well.
But what we want to have is an opportunity for people to defend themselves rather than put them in a forced spot where they're going to be food for the wolves as things move forward. At the current time, if the design stays...
It doesn't just have to be food for the wolves. I think, again, the PvP eye on this is both a good and not great thing. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the shields are up in this case.
Is the same for the jump points. We're going to see a lot of people getting into fights as they wait to get into the jump point or as they get set up to jump through.
Yeah.
Pirate and PvP organizations will have people standing by on both sides waiting for people to come through as they sort through the wreckages of the ships that they kill. Short of having a fleet of people who are trained and competent, there are some servers that you will be in where you will simply just not be able to enter one system or the other because the amount of PvP presence on those choke points will be just too great.
Yep.
This may have a positive impact on Star Citizen, but my gut
I think it's a big may.
Tells me that the Star Citizen community is not really prepared for the level of, well, depravity that some people will get to and how long.
Yeah, I don't think the word prepared is really what it is. I just don't think it's what they want.
Long they will sit there waiting for kills to come through. If there's one thing I learned about EVE Online...
But what they want doesn't really matter. It's what the game company wants to design here, and I think that they definitely want these to be choke points.
Is that if you make a multiplayer game and mechanically you don't take into account the level of ruthlessness that people will go to win, your mechanical system will have problems in the future.
Yep.
What I see here is Star
100%.
Citizen's combat being designed mostly for a non-multiplayer space and a very heavy multiplayer component like jump points coming into a game which is just simply not ready or prepared for a multiplayer environment. Sitting with your shields down at a vulnerable position is only going to end in catastrophe for most players. And I think it's going to leave a lot of people frustrated, pissed off, and angry at CIG, but just also the general community. We're trying to get people together. We're trying to get people...
They won't blame CIG. They'll blame the PvPer.
We're playing the game and having a good time. And if we don't give people the opportunity to defend themselves in an effective way, then we leave the door open for trolls and people who will manipulate and exploit the current mechanical systems of a game to gain advantage over other people. Even in an alpha state, the ruthlessness of people is just part of human nature. Especially with Death of a Spaceman coming around the corner, when there is loss...
The corner's very far away, let's be real.
And punishment associated to losing tactical situations, people will stop at nothing to gain an advantage over each other. And so CIG must understand that if they do not engage with the multiplayer community of their game and design the mechanics around that space, there will be a heavy amount of exploitation and, quite honestly, a death of a lot of the player base because nobody wants to sign in after a long, hard day's work and try to enjoy their time, and they just come up against a brick wall of mechanical problems and skill checks to the point where it's just not fun and not engageable anymore.
Yeah.
And either people will completely avoid the pyro system entirely, or they'll need competent and massive groups of players to help guide them through these situations on a very regular basis. Now that
we just had like a couple weeks where all we talked about was Star Citizen's economy around cargo and all this stuff. This thing on the screen that we're looking at is super paramount in that that discussion. Jumping between Pyro or Magnus or Terra from the Stanton system is what makes the game run. It's what is going to define everything, right? What material is in Terra that isn't in Pyro that we need to make the ship that's on the screen right now or something, right? What is going to motivate players? It has to be...
That may be the point.
These.
Perhaps Star Citizen is trying to tell...
But if you're making it so it's... Like, he hasn't even mentioned the idea of, like, only 5 people maybe can go through this jump point at a time. But there's 30 people on the other side.
Tell people something. Perhaps people need to start taking their skill sets and tactical situational awareness a little more seriously, because if they want to enter into the deeper parts of the game, the risk must equal the reward. I've always maintained the position that everyone playing Star Citizen, whether they're brand new or they're very experienced, should always be training on a regular basis.
What if 30 people can jump together? What if there's 100 people on the other side? What if there's a scout on this side that knows 30 people are coming through, so now there's 40, 50 on the other side?
Understand the systems, understand the ships, but also get involved.
Calling it now, they'll make an armistice zone on both sides. They might.
Involved with the feedback and demand that CIG takes a more serious look at creating an environment.
You land at different spots. You don't. Yeah. So I made a post on Spectrum. Jake clarified that in my chat while I was reacting to it. You land at the jump point. You don't land on different spots in the system.
Skill sets and development of those skill sets.
You just don't
rewarded.
land at the exact
if
same
we live in a
spot
world where just
that
having a sheer more numbers is the defining factor, whether you're winning or losing, a lot of general.
But you likely land in bubble range for a Mantis.
Players in the game are going to have a hard time in that environment. We also want something to work into, to skill into, as we enter the more risky, more dangerous areas of space. If winning or losing comes down to just having more bodies on the field, we run into a very real possibility of Star Citizen turning into something like EVE Online, and although that may not be a terrible thing...
In some aspects it is. It has... You don't want it to be fully Armistice, and you don't want it to be EVE. So you gotta... And I don't think the choices they're making
what really
are
makes Star
solving
Citizen
that
special
problem.
Is you as the person, as the pilot, playing, flying, and navigating the world, you sink or swim.
In my test, you come out with speed.
Based on your skill set and your ability to manipulate the ship to keep yourself safe when you go into the deep parts of space. We don't have skill systems or levels for characters. All we have is the game itself, and you as the physical person existing in this essentially metaverse. How you handle the ships, fly them, and experience the world is all that matters.
Yep.
And perhaps CIG will take a more closer look at the situations that they're putting their players into, and with the advent of master modes being very rough, and easy to exploit in so many ways, I feel like players are going to have a very difficult time when 4.0 comes out, because the majority of the choke points will be at these entrance gates, and I suspect a large majority of players are going to get absolutely destroyed as they try to experience the new content. And so we see a future where the tactical situation, like I've explained before, even though CIG claims that these gate guns and that the measures they've taken will help, short of adding an armistice.
Yeah, they'll help maybe 5 years from now, but they're not helping now, so it doesn't matter what they say.
I can think of no way to make the environment safe other than changing the tactical situation by the flight model itself and different tunings and different weapon systems.
Avenger turning this into a master modes thing is I think, problematic.
So that people have a chance to fight back. And so that you don't put players in a vulnerable spot like they have here with the jump points.
I think it makes all the points he made earlier.
But this was the PvP lens at how to look at jump points. And may God have mercy on people's souls when they try to jump through. Well, thanks for watching, everybody.
I agree with everything he says, other than bringing master modes into the equation, which obviously is part of the equation. When I made my post, I started typing the same shit that he just said. But I think what it does is it like, I even saw some of the chatters be like, he's talking about master modes, and like the problem with it is everybody just starts going on about master modes and then missing like all the really, really good points he made. Again, Eve players know what this is like, and you don't necessarily want that in this game. You don't want what Eve can do in this game. I don't want it, at least, because I don't think the players in this community can handle that type of experience. It's brutal. It's brutal. You just spawn through it. You're dead. You just put your hands off your computer and you just die. And it kind of sucks. So, yeah, CIG figuring something out about it is really big. I don't know what it'll be. For me, the biggest issue there is grouping. Because if we're coming through staggered, you just die staggered instead of coming through as a group. Think of every sci-fi game where shit just comes in and it's like, and then you just go, oh crap, I'm dead, you know? So yeah, we'll have to see. I don't come up with solutions usually for CIG. I think it's always really good to give the feedback of what you think is really good and what you think is really bad. I'm not a game designer. It's the game designer's job to come up with the solutions. So for me, I do think that you should be able to group as many people as you can party with in a jump point. If there's no limits to parties, then there should be no limit to how many people go through a jump point, and you should appear in the same location together. And we'll have to see. There is a little bit of confusion on whether or not you are in the exact location together, every single person in that group, or not. So I posted on Spectrum, and we'll see if we get an answer from a dev on that. I don't care what anybody else has to say, and what your interpretation of the video is. The only thing that matters is a developer answer. That's it. That's it. To clarify that. So that's how I feel on that subject, and yeah, that's about it. Because it doesn't matter what we speculate on what they said and what we interpret what they said. What they said could be interpreted in multiple ways, so they have to repeat it, so it can't. That's all I care about in that situation, is just let me know what's going on with that. What our opinions are on what they said just don't really matter. Just need a little clarification on that side. And then outside that is, yeah, how far does CIG want to allow gate camping? Because they are definitely going to allow it. It's just how far are they going to let it go, you know? Are they going to handle it the same way they handle griefing? Are they going to consider it griefing? We'll have to see. Definitely going in front of somebody and blocking them, I would consider that griefing. But outside that, I don't know, man. I think choke points are good. We need them. These are the first real choke points. And this is where PvP should happen. It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be. We'll see.